Hello and welcome. You're with us here on Business Today. I'm Abha Bakaya. Here are the day's top stories. Big debate on price rise in Lok Sabha. Opposition corners the government on record inflation figures, even as the RBI is all set to raise interest rates again on Friday. Fourth straight day of gains on the Lal Street. Sensex sprints over 500 points, reclaims 58,000 mark. Nifty tops 17,300. Hefty buying seen in auto, metals and financials. It's great news for equity investors. Foreign institutional investors return to Indian stock markets, turned net buyers in equities in July after a sustained 9-month sell-off. India's 5G spectrum auction ends on the 7th day. The government nets over 1.5 lakh crore rupees from the sale. Reliance Jio emerges as the 5th generation leader. While we are seeing a stellar rally in the markets, Nikhil Kamath believes that we may soon see markets take a U-turn. The Zerodha co-founder is also wary of betting on Zomato. We get you that exclusive conversation on the show. Rupee closes at a near 1-month high of 79.01 against the US dollar after rallying 24 paise in trade today, up 89 paise in just 3 days as the dollar tumbles against all major world currencies. Motown on the fast track. Car sales zoom in July as buyers flock to showrooms. New car launches drive sales ahead of the festive season. Best ever month yet for Tata Motors. Lok Sabha finally took up a discussion on price rise today, and the discussion held under Rule 193 of the Lok Sabha, under which no voting takes place, had been a bone of contention between the Treasury benches and the opposition since the session began on 18th of July. The opposition launched a harsh attack on the government, blaming it for uncontrolled inflation. Listen in.
पिछले 14 महीने से डबल डिजिट महंगाई दर है इस देश में, पिछले 30 साल में सबसे ज्यादा। अप्रैल 2022 में ये 15.8% था, जुलाई में थोड़ा कम हुआ है और कंज्यूमर फूड प्राइस इंडेक्स जो है वो बिल्कुल आसमान छू रहा है। और इसके ऊपर आपने जो रोजमर्रा की चीजें हैं उसके ऊपर जीएसटी बढ़ा दिया, आटे के ऊपर, पनीर के ऊपर, दही के ऊपर, शाही के ऊपर, पेंसिल के ऊपर, शार्पनर के ऊपर आपने तो बच्चों को भी नहीं छोड़ा। और जो हास्यास्पद बात यह है कि आपने जीएसटी चमचों और कड़छियों पे भी बढ़ा दिया।
अभी ये सोचना चाहिए कि ईंधन में आग लगा है। कभी कभी मेरे मन में आता है कि ये सरकार बहादुर क्या हमें कच्चा खाने का आदत दिलाना चाहते हैं। मैं कहती हूं कि ये सब्जी अगर मैं कच्चा खा जाती हूं क्योंकि ईंधन नहीं मिलता है तो भाई कच्चा खाने का बात कर रही हूं, क्योंकि एलपीजी सिलेंडर 4 बार एलपीजी सिलेंडर का दाम बढ़ा। 3-4 साल पहले जब इसका भाव था 600, आज हो गया 1100। तो आप समझिए कि जो गरीब है, जो मजबूर है, वो कैसे 1100 रुपया देके सिलेंडर खरीदेगा। ये हमें कच्चा खिलाने की आदत जो आप लोग डलवाना चाहते हैं ये बंद कीजिए। ईंधन का, एलपीजी का भाव जरूर कमती कीजिए।
8 साल बहुत होते नहीं, बहू भी शादी होके जब घर आती है ना तो 8 साल के बाद शादी में कोई नहीं सुनता कि ये लेगेसी इश्यूज है, मेरी सास के टाइम से चल रहा है। 8 साल में वो बहू उस घर की फुल फ्लेज मेंबर हो जाती है। तो यही महंगाई का प्रॉब्लम है। मुझे उनके शब्द सुषमा जी के याद है जो आज इनके भाषण पे पूरे लागू होते। ट्रेजरी की भाषा आम आदमी नहीं समझता, आम आदमी केवल वो भाषा समझता है उसके जेब से क्या निकल रहा है और उसके बदले में उसको क्या मिल रहा है।
So the GDP of the US fell 0.9% in the second quarter. following a 1.6 decline in the first quarter, marking the start of what they call themselves an unofficial recession. There were some members who were saying, even Adirji mentioned, are we going into a stagflation? And will the finance minister please reply? I will first of all start with the last speaker, but the leader of the opposition here. There is no question of India getting into recession or stagflation.
Meanwhile, the RBI expected to raise interest rates for the third time this year on Friday to combat inflation. And the RBI has increased rates twice this year already, once in an out-of-turn increase in May and then again in June. That's a total of 90 basis points. Analysts expect the rates to be raised by another half a percentage point on Friday.
इंडिया में भी थोड़ा सीजनैलिटी है फूड इन्फ्लेशन में, वो शायद नीचे आ सकती है. जो हमें देखना है वो जो कोर इन्फ्लेशन है, सर्विसेज इन्फ्लेशन है, वो कैसे नीचे ले आए, और उसके लिए आरबीआई रेट बढ़ा रही है और उससे कुछ फर्क पड़ेगी थोड़ी देर में. हमारे पास अभी रिजर्व्स काफ़ी हैं, फॉरेन एक्सचेंज रिजर्व्स 565 करोड़ कुछ हैं, तो इनके पास रिजर्व्स ही नहीं है. और इसमें आरबीआई ने काफ़ी अच्छा काम किया है रिजर्व्स बढ़ाने में. हमारा थोड़ा बफर है, अगर तेल का दाम बढ़ जाता है तो हमें हमारे प्रॉब्लम्स इतने गंभीर नहीं हैं जैसे कि श्रीलंका या पाकिस्तान के प्रॉब्लम्स हैं. और फिर हमारा डेट भी इतना ज़्यादा नहीं है, वो फॉरेन डेट भी काफ़ी कम है. तो मेरे ख्याल में हमारा स्थिति कुछ अलग ही है.
Reliance Jio has emerged as the most aggressive bidder in the 5G spectrum auction, which finally ended today. The auction, expected to last a couple of days, stretched to 7 days, with the government netting more than 1.5 lakh crore rupees after hectic bidding for the UP East Circle. The circle is one of the most populous in the country, and reports say that the per unit price of 1800 megahertz spectrum jumped to more than 160 crore rupees versus the 91 crore rupee base price. Reliance has bid 88,078 crore rupees, while Airtel has committed 43,084 crore rupees. Vodafone Idea has bid 18,799 crores, and Adani Data has spent just 212 crore on the 5G waves.
The spectrum auction has concluded successfully. बहुत अच्छे से स्पेक्ट्रम ऑक्शन कंप्लीट हुआ है. 1,50,173 करोड़ टोटल बिड अमाउंट. जितना स्पेक्ट्रम ऑक्शन के लिए दिया था 72,098 मेगाहर्ट्ज, 72098 megahertz. Out of that, 51,236 megahertz has been sold.
July has reportedly seen the highest ever auto sales in the country. In a trend seen in the massive response for the new Mahindra Scorpio N, which registered more than 1 lakh bookings in just half hour of opening, July has seen personal vehicle sales bounce back after months of COVID-related restrictions and a supply squeeze due to semiconductor shortage. As the festive season rolls in, there's a clear acceleration in Motown. Maruti Suzuki posted sales of more than 140,000 vehicles. That's up 7% from last year and 16% from June. Hyundai, Tata Motors, some of the others we're tracking for you. Tata Motors, in fact, continuing to launch a new high, selling 47,505 vehicles in July. That's 57% over last year. M&M also riding high on new SUV launches, selling more than 28,000 vehicles, up 33% year-on-year. Toyota has recovered some of its mojo in July, sales up 50% year-on-year. The deadline to file your income tax return has finally ended on the 31st of July, and over 5.83 crore returns were filed this fiscal. Moreover, GST collections this month were second highest since the tax came into force. My colleague Karishma Sudani joining us on this. Karishma, why did the government decide not to extend the ITR filing deadline this time around?
Well, record-breaking numbers that have come in with income tax return filings, and I say record-breaking because the Revenue Secretary Tarun Bajaj himself has told Business Today that government had decided this time to stay on its word of not extending, only because of the fact that they really wanted to bring the system back into normalcy. This was also the first time after the whole technical glitch on the IT portal that government wanted to test its systems and to check if things are going fine. And as per them, things were fine. The control room was working 24/7 most of the times, and people were getting help if there were any minor glitches. Now, government was, of course, able to see that more than 5 crore returns were filed within the 31st July deadline. To be precise, the number that's coming is 5.84 crore ITR returns that were filed. In fact, close to 1 crore returns were filed only on the last weekend, which was the deadline weekend as per the CBDT. Now, further going, it's expected that about 20 to 30 lakh more returns could be filed in comparison to last few years. That's almost close to 7 crore returns that are usually filed when it comes to individual salaried taxpayers. Now, taxpayers can still file their returns, but that will attract some kind of basic penalty. The first one, if for income below 5 lakh per annum, that will attract about 1,000 rupees fine, and above 5 lakh will attract rupees 5,000 fine. The government is really appreciative of the fact that taxpayers kept the deadline in mind, and since the next deadline is also going to be for the corporates in the month of October, it clearly sets an example that there cannot be an extension expected, keeping in mind that the government didn't consider it for individual salaried, despite so many requests across Twitter that a lot of netizens were tweeting for extension by 15 days. Now, yet another important day, because GST numbers have been out and July has seen record-breaking second highest numbers for the year. It was in April that the collection was of about 1.68 lakh crore, and it is in July that GST collections have come up to about 1.48 lakh crore.
And here's what else is making news in the corporate world. ITC reporting a healthy set of numbers. Profit jumped 34%. Total revenue from operations of the FMCG major increased by 39%. Margins under pressure. It was Mahindra & Mahindra which was the darling of Dalal Street today. The stock rallied over 6%, hitting an all-time high. This after the automaker received over 1 lakh bookings for its all-new Scorpio N within 30 minutes of booking commencement on Saturday. The company also reported a 33% surge in sales year-on-year. Online food delivery giant Zomato will have a new identity and structure. The company is moving to a multiple CEO structure for its businesses that will be housed under a larger organization called Eternal. The new entity will have Zomato, Blinkit, Hyperpure and Feeding India, all organized in order of size and impact of business. Equities printed for a fourth straight day as hefty buying was witnessed in auto, metals and financials. The Sensex was up 545 points, claiming 58,000. Nifty rallied over 180 points, shutting above 17,300. The auto basket saw all-round gains, with Tata Motors and M&M being the top Nifty gainers. Adani Ports, Bharti Airtel and ONGC some of the other blue-chip gainers in trade today. All sectoral indices closed in the green except for Nifty Pharma. Sun Pharma saw profit booking after healthy earnings coming in. FMCG stocks also underperformed. HUL and Britannia were down 1% each. Other laggards included HDFC Life and Divi's Labs. Markets have been buoyant for some time now, but will the rally sustain, or is D Street witnessing a bear market pullback? We at Business Today spoke to Nikhil Kamath, co-founder True Beacon and Zerodha. Here's an excerpt of that conversation.
You know, before we talk about the market, I want to talk about the one stock we spoke about in our previous conversation, which was last year, about a year ago exactly. But it was Zomato, and you said there's no way you would be buying that stock at 125 and 130. Well, the stock has lost 75% of its value now. I mean, you would have seen it coming, but how do you approach it now, and in the light of the complete collapse in that name?
Well, it's a hard thing to say, Udayan, but I would personally probably still not buy it. The path to profitability does not seem very clear, and the acquisitions that they have done in the last 1 year, I don't know when the rewards of that will actually start coming through, but at the current juncture, I probably would not be putting my neck out and buying.
Okay. And how are you reading this pullback in the market? I mean, is it just another spectacular bear market rally, or is it something more than that in your eyes?
Well, from a broader perspective, I think it would be fair to say that the issues have not gone away. Be it with slowing growth, be it with inflation, be it with geopolitical tensions that we have across the world, and things like crude and commodity prices generally being significantly higher. So the problems which took the market down in a way, or they corrected that 20% when they did, the problems really haven't gone away. So it would probably be fair to assume it is a bear market pullback. I've been tracking FI numbers, even though they might have bought in the last couple of days. Overall, the trend still largely seems to be that they're selling and taking money out of India. So I wouldn't read too much into this rally which we have seen over the last week or two. I think we need to wait and watch when the problems actually get solved before we take a more structural call on the market.
Is it your view then that the markets might go back and retest the lows where we started this rally from? I mean, is that very much a possibility in your eyes still?
When I look at multiples and valuations compared to our own historical average, where we sit today is still fairly expensive. So one should not be surprised if the markets were to go down and test, whatever that 15,000 point that we tested in the last correction. The question, I think the bigger question here is what happens to growth going forward? How high do interest rates have to actually go before inflation is contained? These are tough questions, the answers to which are not very easy to fathom. So I would really wait for the cycle to play out. I would wait for all the interest rate hikes that might come our way, see what happens to growth then, and then take a call.
Nikhil, you've always tracked, the backdrop of the geopolitical tensions and how it impacts some of the world's largest economies very closely, and talked about US being such a big part of that. Given the current environment and the fact that things keep shifting, do you see more money moving towards the US or out of it?
Well, it's a very interesting thing, Abba. I think the share of US in world trade, albeit organically, is bound to go down. A lot of the things which are happening across the world, be it us buying crude in rubles or, China and Russia doing more trade, I think it is invariable to a certain extent that this trend will continue, that the US's share in world trades continues to go down. The question is, will there come a point when their status as the world's currency, or the reserve currency that the world uses to store money and trade, will there be a real challenge on that? Personally, I hope that happens, because I feel like it will allow room, it will probably create a vacuum which will allow for many other economies across the world to thrive. And I think the dominance that the dollar has held for as long as they have, it would only be, it would be good for markets across the world if it is challenged in one way or another. So I am more critical of America than I am of India. I feel on a relative basis, the opportunity and the story, the India story is probably, I would look at it more from a filter of optimism, the India story. The one thing that the US continues to do is be able to attract talent and innovate faster than the rest of the world. And I think that is incredible. I think it's a big problem for us if we continue to lose talent to America in the manner that we have in the past. And that's something that we should really focus as a country to curtail and prevent that our smartest minds, or some of them, are moving out of the country.
You spoke about FII flows earlier, Nikhil, but let me ask you about what you're sensing. I mean, because you're also the co-founder of Zerodha and in a great position to tell us which way the wind is blowing on the retail HNI front, and also with True Beacon. So, do you sense caution there after the performance of the last 6 months, despite this rally, or do you sense a lot of confidence and exuberance?
So Udayan, the regulators did a great job in culling leverage before the correction happened. If I have to draw one difference between crypto markets and equity markets, I would say the leverage in equity markets had gone down a lot, not by choice, but by virtue of regulation. So people really in the last 20% correction that happened, unlike a market where you could, lever 10 times or 5 times or whatever, I don't think the pain has been that bad. I don't think people really had to deal with too many margin calls or positions were cut like you would have witnessed in the previous correction, maybe 2008 or 2000 or the prior big corrections we have witnessed in our market. So the overall sense of optimism still remains. I'm here talking only about the 1-2% of the country which kind of has financial market exposure. On a larger level, there might be a lot of pain with inflation and unemployment, but for the topic of this discussion, focusing on the equity market alone, I would say the pain has not been too much, at least not in the last correction from 18,000 to 15,000 change that happened.
And you can catch the full interview on businesstoday.in as well as our YouTube channel. Don't forget to tune in. That's all we could pack into the show today. Bye for now.